Hi, I'm Natalie and I'm a second year historian at Jesus. So I was so nervous before my interview, but I think it's good to be nervous because, you know, it gets the adrenaline going, and yeah, everyone's nervous, so don't worry about that. And actually, a few weeks ago, my tutor said that she remembers me being really, really nervous, and I still got in, so I don't think that's an issue. But looking back, there was nothing to be nervous about at all. The tutors actually are really lovely and they're not there to be like super scary. It's just kind of to get to know you, discuss your subject, and it can actually be really fun. So just enjoy it, embrace being nervous, and just don't overthink too much. So one thing I did that was really helpful to prepare for my interview was kind of similar preparation to the HAT test, so just looking at sources that I'd never seen before, practicing that skill of just critically analysing them, and then just kind of vocalising my annotations just alone in my room, just practising speaking out loud. Also, I'd look over my personal statement and write in the margin kind of things that I thought tutors could potentially ask me to elaborate on or challenge my views on, so that was really useful. Also, I'd listen to like podcasts or read just short articles about stuff that I discussed in my personal statement or related to my written work, just to refresh my memory about those kind of topics. Also, there's free kind of access websites that you can sign up to. So mine was Access Oxbridge, but it's now called Zero Gravity. I know that Project Access does similar things where you can sign up to get a mentor, and I signed up and had a mentor that was a second year historian, and she gave me a mock interview on Skype, which was so useful. So if your school isn't arranging mock interviews, or even if they are, it's just great practice to, just to practice the interview style. So my advice for people before the interview is make sure that you're there with plenty of time to spare, make sure the technology's working, make sure you've got a glass of water next to you, read your personal statement and your written work, and kind of just try to de-stress before you go in, take a few breaths because you don't want to go in all worked up. And then during the interview, know that it's just, think of it as a discussion rather than an interrogation. And just discuss your subject, and like I said, try to enjoy it. Take your time with your answers. I said so many times, can I have a minute to think about that? Ask for clarification if it's like words or concepts you don't understand. And just take your time with your answers, and if you don't know an answer, kind of mould the question to what you do know, or something that's relevant that you can kind of mould and show off your way of thinking that way. And then after the interview, I know it's easier said than done, but just try to forget about it. It's done now. Focus on the rest of your schoolwork and just try not to compare with anyone else that was interviewed that day. Like, I came out crying my eyes out, and upon reflection, like, there was no reason. I've been so dramatic, and I got in, so like, it's just normal to feel like okay about them, sad about them, like just try to forget about it.
Hello, I'm Eleanor. I'm a second year history and economics student here at Jesus. So obviously I was really nervous. I had no idea what to expect, and also because for history I'd done it at A-level, so I was sort of less nervous about that one. But then also I was sort of scared that history is so big that they could literally ask me about anything and I wouldn't know what was going to go on. And then economics, I had never studied it before in my life. So I was sort of I had no idea what to expect. But then what I found out is that they knew all of this about me, and they had my personal statement, and they knew that I'd never done economics before, and they knew the history that I did know. So they just asked me about that. So it was fine, and I had nothing to be scared about, because they're never going to ask you about things that you don't actually know about, because that's not useful to anyone. So I think it's really important that you make sure you familiarise yourself with everything that you've given them. So if you've given them an essay, make sure you sort of reread the essay, remember what it's about, anything you've written about in your personal statement, just make sure that if they did ask you about it, you have something to say. But then it's also important that you don't get too stressed about it, because you know, if there's a question that they ask you that's on like something that you just can't answer, they're always going to be very happy to move on, and just like they're going to tailor the interview so you can show your best potential. And also, yeah, so make sure that you've got like everything set up, ready, and you're sort of just like nice and calm, just sort of spending 10 minutes making sure like your computer's all set up, that whenever it starts, you're just going to be ready, no stress, and just spending like the first 10 minutes before just like calming, because anything you try and like shove in your brain in those last 10 minutes won't be that useful. But going in with a clear head, clear mind, calm, will just mean that you're so much more comfortable, and then you'll present so much better. So I did some reading because I had to figure out if I was actually interested in economics or not. So I read some books, but they were all books that, you know, you'd just find in Waterstones that were like for anyone that might be interested in sort of like vague concepts in economics. But then in my interview, it was just very much like they made sure that it was completely, you could start from scratch. They were just trying to find out, do you sort of have the common sense that you need to be able to approach problems, logical thinking, and then just like, you know, sort of like maths abilities and stuff. Like it was very much, I had nothing to worry about at all. Like people who had studied economics A-level wouldn't really have had any advantage over me at all. I think it was just about like making sure you are familiar with what you've signed up to do, because they will expect you to know some stuff about it, but you're not going to be expected to know any content. They're just looking for aptitude, and you can't do anything to see if you have that or not. You just have to turn up and show them what you've got. So I think it's really important that you remember that they're just going to try and get to know you and just see what you're about. Just stay calm, collected. If you need to take a minute to think about it, just stop and communicate with them. Like they're trying to figure out how you think. So the more that you talk and the more that you sort of just say, okay, well the first thing that I've thought of when you ask me that question is that, you don't have to worry about whether what you're saying is going to be right or not. Just sort of talk them through and just be as open with them as possible, because that's going to mean that you don't just sit there in silence, which is then sort of wasting your time. Whereas if you are just sort of going to try and communicate with them as much as possible, it will then just mean that they can then help you out if you do need it, just to be able to access the questions that they might be asking you. But yeah, honestly, I think it's just mainly about staying calm and just remembering to try and be as much yourself as possible, because they will not be trying to catch you out. They just want to get to know you.